Hello, everybody. Welcome to another exciting IG Live. I cannot wait to talk to our guest today. Just wanted to share with you my new pipe. It's a Dracula pipe. I think it's pretty cool. Pretty excited about it. Just thought I'd chime in and share that. So today I get to speak with someone who does a lot of podcasting and loves to tell other people's stories. So I am excited about interviewing them and getting their thoughts on key topics, as well as seeing what kind of valuable advice they can give us as well. So we are going to get rolling here as soon as she hits that wonderful little button to join. Hey, great to see you both. It's great to have you with us today. Obviously, Rodney, I know you very well. You've got a live coming up, I believe, this Thursday. Am I not correct? I'd love to know what you're talking about as well. Okay, so she has clicked on to join, and so she is going to, let's see, let me go live. She is going to be with us in just a second, which is great. It's logging on. We'll see how well the live does here. Hey! You did it!
Oh, I did, Brad. It's challenging though right now. Like, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I don't even know how these live things work. My poor husband is standing here and I'm like, I don't actually know what I'm doing. So
It's okay.
you can hear me, right? And I can hear you.
You
I
can
can't hear him very loud though. Should I give me a minute to adjust my volume? See, I'm a podcast host. I don't do Instagram lives.
That's okay. I talk loudly though, so you know.
See, like yesterday, I asked you for your Zoom link.
I know, right?
And my husband was like, you got to use your phone today. I'm like, no, I don't. He said,
Uh-oh. There you are.
okay.
Okay. Are we all good?
We are. I don't hear you that
Yep.
loud, but
I think I sent you a Zoom link. That's the funny thing.
I know
Is
you
it
went.
didn't click in my mind.
Yeah, I know. That's why when you sent to me, I told my husband, no, we don't have to use my phone. He sent me a Zoom link. So anyway, I think we're good. Okay, I'm gonna take a breath here. Like, you don't even know how much IG lives are out of my comfort zone. Okay, everybody listening. So
That's good to know.
I'm used to being able to, edit and be
Yeah.
in charge of the questions. So take a
Yeah.
breath,
No,
and I'm ready.
you are on the other end this time. So
Yes.
yes, I actually do not, because I always feel kind of like when I'm on the other end getting interviewed, it's like, ugh, I mean, like I have to actually think of things.
Yeah. So, but thank you for having me on. With all that said, that's why I always say yes, because I just appreciate the honor of being asked and sharing things and having these conversations. So thank you for having me on.
It's an honor to have you on. Okay, so all those people that are going to watch live sometime throughout, as well as that will rewatch it, why don't you go ahead and just introduce yourself.
Okay. Okay. And just you're cutting out a little bit for me. So if I'm like, I don't know, it's probably something with me, not you. So just letting you know that if I don't hear you right or there's some delay, that's why.
If ask the audience real quickly, are we cutting out? Is either one of us cutting out? Let us know in the comments. Okay.
Okay. My name is Andrea Miller, and I live in Kansas City right now. We've lived here in the Kansas City area. We've lived here about 2.5 years. Prior to that, we lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma area, and I live here with my two daughters, 19 and 13, and my husband and two dogs. I have a podcast, Her Story Speaks, and working on some writing projects, but that's kind of the overall very general of who I am. See, I need a pipe to relax me right now. I'm like, you're firing up your pipe to relax. That's what I need.
What I do, right? It's like a Zen.
That's what I just thought.
I've got an English blend in there that I think somebody like C.S. Lewis or Tolkien would be proud of, and yeah. So
okay, all right. I need to take that tip for the future.
Yeah, my wife loves the smell of them. It reminds her of her grandpa.
My grandpa smoked a pipe too, so I can understand that.
So, in the house, like a cigar or cigarettes do. And the key to know is that you never inhale a pipe. You just puff on
I I did not know that. So it's
it.
not really bad for you? I don't want to spread false
Actually,
information here.
Surgeon General came out um, last time they did. It says on average, pipe smokers live equal, if not longer, than people that don't smoke.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a relaxing
Well,
rest and smoke a pipe.
would that work for me then? New
I
image, start smoking a pipe, sitting
If
back and
you told me you'd smoke a pipe, I would send you one
oh,
with
okay.
tobacco, and I
Let me
would.
think. Let me think about that, Brad, because I just might say yes. Okay, I'll try lots of things once. So, oh,
Uh,
okay. So
all right.
that's me. But you're in charge. I'll just sit back. I forget. I'm not the host here.
Okay, so all right, so you and I had the pleasure of talking
Mhm.
through Zoom. It took us forever to be able to catch up. By the way, you're being encouraged to get a pipe. By the way,
I
and the
just saw that. I just
yeah,
saw that. Yes, I might. We'll see. First, just for you, Brad. But yes, it took us forever, and I almost had to cancel on you this morning, but I was determined not to. We had
wow,
a huge storms blow through. I'm in Kansas City, Midwest. We had
yeah,
tornado warnings. Our yard is a mess. Our patio was
hmm.
destroyed. It's just sad, but we have power, and so I'm like, okay, I'll put the mess to the side,
So
and we're
you
gonna do
guys are
this.
okay.
So Mother Nature tried to get in the way of today, but we're
Okay,
here.
all right. So this, okay, just so my audience knows, I ask these general questions. Do you have a religious background?
I yes and no. So was thinking back because you, God bless you, you did give me the questions in advance, and I don't even do that for my guests. So I appreciated that. My core family growing up, mom and dad was not religious at all, never went to church. My mom tried to get me and my brother to church occasionally. But her family, which was a very big part of my life, so my extended family, grandma, aunts, very religious, and I would say fundamental evangelical religious. So I definitely had that influence growing up. But again, the home front, not as much. My grandma, who's still alive, is very, very fundamentalist. Like I remember her, you sit down and have the sinner's prayer and accepting Jesus when I was like 5 with her. Like I can still remember that. And I remember coming back to her though, being like, well, you're like trying to get a grasp even at that young age. Like, so you're telling me like all these people that don't believe this are going to hell and like Jew, like, and her just being, yep, that's, and so I just remember even at a young age grappling a little bit with like, okay, but I don't want to go to hell, so gonna say this prayer and I guess I'm saved. So that was childhood influence. I would say then high school, college, not in church, not at all connected. Early marriage, me and my husband got married really quick and I was pretty young. We tried to get involved in church on and off. I ended up working for a mega church in Iowa for 2 or 3 years. I would say when we moved to Oklahoma 9 years ago, that's when we really got connected with the church. Like that was when I was all in and immersed with it. So yeah, that was
Okay,
a long answer. That was probably more than you wanted.
that's perfect. That's perfect. So, are you still involved with the church today?
I am not right now. I mean, no, we don't. We are not church members right now. We are not in a church. I wrestle with that a little bit. I mean, part of my story is being very immersed in the church. We moved to Oklahoma. Me and my husband were our marriage was just at a really awful low point, like almost separating. And I remember he got a job in Oklahoma, and I was so glad because I thought, oh, that's the Bible Belt. Like we are going to get all into church. It's going to save our family. And you know, I struggle a little bit because the church we did go to has, as now when I look back, a lot of the theology is very toxic, but the people were embracing and loving to us, and they were people I called friends for the time there. Um, I also question though sometimes had we not been a white, straight, cisgendered, middle upper class family, if we would have not, we very much fit in that box. So leaving that when things started crumbling, I've had a really hard time wanting to get connected back in a church. My husband definitely has not wanted to. I think I have times of really still wanting that connection and spiritual connection. But I think I found church in other ways. But right now I'm not connected to going to Sunday morning church, tithing, all those things that we think are church, community groups, none of that right now. And I
Oh,
don't know that I'll ever be there again.
hmm. Yeah, actually, that's quite common. People struggle of wondering if they'll ever be back in. Uh,
Yeah.
so obviously, you went through some breaking points or deconstruction, um, I guess you could call it, between you and religion. Do you have any specific time to which you went was an aha moment? It's like, this structure or this setup isn't for me, or religion or whatever have you. Do you have any of those moments?
I for sure do. I was thinking about this question. I looked at your questions this morning. Um, I was thinking about that, and I don't have one moment. I have a period of time where lots of moments all came and just kind of everything exploded. Um, so I'm not going to have a short answer here. Is that
That
okay? Okay. I look at, like, honestly, part of my starting my podcast is part of that. And I know we'll talk about that in a little bit, but started my podcast in early 2019, and that started leading me to other stories of women. Like, I thought I would just be telling stories of women that like had these very kind of white evangelical experiences of God and just like safe stories that would encourage other women. But the podcast started leading me to other women's stories that were different than mine. Emmy Kegler I've talked before about that. She was like the turning point of my podcast, and my stuff. And at that time, I had her on in November 2019 and Marcy Walker on in 2019. And prior to that, I had gone to the Evolving Faith Conference, and I had Sarah Bessey on in October of 2019. And Rachel Held Evans had just passed, and I had started reading all of her stuff. So
yeah.
all of those things all just really exploded in late summer, fall of 2019. And I started reading Rachel Held Evans, and I was like, oh my gosh. Heard Emmy's story. Emmy Kegler, those that don't know, is a queer pastor, and told her story, had her on. She's been on my podcast several times. And at that time, I was not affirming. I hate to even use that word, and I can't even believe that time I wasn't. But that's just how I was born and raised. Like, that's being gay is a sin.
Mhm.
And hearing her story totally changed me. At that same time, with all those other things going on, I was very involved with our church and leading the women's ministry, leading Bible studies. And some things started to come to my awareness about women in ministry. And that was probably the huge, like, wait, what? Um, I got reprimanded for teaching a marriage class without my husband there, teaching other men. And that's when I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, women can't be pastors. Um, so that really started my questioning. My daughter was told some things, from her youth pastor, that she could never be a head pastor, because she was a woman. And so that I was like, so again, I feel like everything just really exploded on on me at once. That that safe box, this safe little Christianity, worked for a long time. I
Mhm.
mean, we can stay in that little box, and especially as a white cisgendered woman, I mean, as long as I don't want to preach or teach men, I'm pretty good. Um, so I think it was all those stories, my own life. That was late 2019, questioning everything. Early 2020, I think my faith started, I know, unraveling more. My dad passed away suddenly in January of 2019. I got a in January of 2020, I got a cancer diagnosis. It was just everything I thought to be true just really came crashing down. I also started speaking out, like, against Trump and all that, and really kind of saw where all the people I thought were like close friends and believed the same Jesus. I thought it kind of all just started coming to a head with that, because, of course, that did not go well, speaking out against him speaking up for the LGBTQ community. People that knew me as one way, Bible study teacher,
Yeah.
preaching submissive wife, teaching that, and all of a sudden I'm speaking up against all these things. So I understand that a lot of friends and church members probably were a little like, what actually just happened to her and her family? Because we did have a radical shift in our beliefs and faith, like within a 6 month period, I would say.
Just fall into sin, right? I mean,
Exactly. We just, I mean, and I do know some still believe that. Like, what happened to their family? They are just been, and it's hard. Like, that's a hard part of it because I feel like we are so much more loving and inclusive people than we've ever been. I mean, my husband had a radical faith shift along with me. My daughter, I think, also, I don't, I think she's what helped encourage us. But it is like that is what's looked at, like what happened to their family. Um, and that makes me sad because I think so many that have come out of toxic theology, toxic faith environments are looked at upon like from those that are still in them.
so, okay, first of all, that's a lot, right?
I know. I
And
don't even know what your question was, Brad. I'm just talking.
no, no, perfect. And basically, you did answer the question, okay? Just so you know, whatever you thought.
Okay.
So, but I mean, I understand. I mean, when your world comes crashing down, I mean, when all of that happened,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it was a dizzying experience as well as really challenged some other people and made them worry for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, did you grow up in any type of purity culture um, influence?
And so another long answer. That is a good question because a lot of my story, my daughter's story, is coming out of that purity culture, and that's a big part of the toxic theology that I am aware of now and try to speak up against because I very much played a part in promoting it. I personally, when I look back, I wouldn't say I grew up in it because, again, my parents were not big churchgoers and promoted that. But on that same note, I would say, and my husband is well aware, we've talked of this, we met very quickly, got married very quickly, and that was because we were going to live together. And my family just about lost it with that. So we got married really quick. So I look at that and I'm like, I can say I didn't grow up in it, but that's why I got married to my husband 5 months after meeting him. He was moving away, and I'm like, oh, I'll go live with him. I just graduated from college. But that was not going to work with my family. And so what's the answer? Just get married. And they were all really happy about that.
It,
And
it,
I
it
and I and I think me and my husband have had a really hard marriage, like 25 years of a really hard marriage because we didn't know each other. I didn't know he was an alcoholic. He didn't know the depth of my eating disorders. So of course it's really easy to say like, oh, we wouldn't have even gotten married, but I wouldn't have the life I do now. But it was definitely purity culture that we got married. And because of it. But then fast forward, and that's one of my, this gets me a little emotional, but big regrets with my oldest daughter because she was very immersed for, gosh, those most formative years of her life from fifth grade through high school in purity culture. I mean, that's the church we raised her in. That's what I thought was the way to do it. That when you're in that and immersed in it, and especially with your first child, and you don't know, and you want to be raising your children in a sin-free life and save them from hell. So she was really, really immersed in that. I was part of teaching it in the Bible studies and purity culture. I mean, I know it means probably different things to different people. I think it's Emily Joy in her book Church 2 really has some good definitions of it, but I think it's when it comes down to it's sex is only between a man and a woman that are married. So obviously it's very homophobic definition. It's a very narrow of like what's acceptable within that. And then it also is so shame-based. I mean, my daughter with the modesty, with the told to cover herself, with told from her boyfriend's mom to cover herself. I mean, it blames so much of the girls, women for covering themselves to protect boys. And it is so also so gendered. I mean, that's where the submissive wife, all of that comes into it. And so my daughter really has a lot of shame and I want to say damage from that, but she's had to work through a lot in therapy from that. It's added, and that's why I do speak out so much with purity culture because I've seen the damage, and I think moms, parents, caregivers, I think they come from a pure heart. I'm just speaking from my own experience with that, um, wanting the best for their children, but I don't think they're understanding the full ramifications, the shame it causes. I mean, it also is, it is creating a rape culture. It really is. And I know that seems extreme, but when you look at the shame, the blame, the blaming women, the not teaching girls consent, like just saying the only option is not having sex. Um, I could go on and on about that. And that was a long answer again, but that is a
Oh,
topic I'm passionate about because I've seen the damage firsthand and I have a lot of regret raising my own daughter in it. And so I'm trying to do better and teach others just from own experience with that one.
no, I went through purity culture before it was called purity culture.
Yeah.
Turn or burn, or you will your your hands will get hairy, or you'll go blind, or all the other things that came out of the 80s, right? So, and so my wife and I waited the entire time because I was scared half to death.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Really,
Yeah.
young and so scared that by the time 27 hit and we got married, I couldn't just turn it off.
Right.
It
Right.
was still there, and she had gone through, making sure no one stumbles and all, or no man stumbles, and puts all the onus on the woman to do that, right? So it is incredibly toxic. It's something that's still going on today.
Oh, I mean, it goes on. I would say I don't even know if I would think I know of a church in kind of that Bible Belt area that it doesn't go on.
Yep.
It's just what it is. And it's just, the more I've like unearthed there's so many layers to it. I mean, it is like a racist, patriarchal, all those things are involved with it. Homophobia, like all of those things are involved in establishing that. And I just want people's eyes to open up to understand that. And also that it doesn't mean we're just raising our girls and boys in like just free sex hippie world either. I mean, it's really so much more about just having these open, honest conversations with our kids, not shaming our daughters, teaching our boys to respect women. I mean, I look at that, it's so tied together because I look at that with our church that we attended where women couldn't be pastors. And the boys and youth group knew that. I mean, I've had a lot of conversations with Grace, my daughter, because she would get her butt grabbed, her boobs grabbed. She would be told to, she led worship, cover up, wear loose shirts. But those boys did not have respect for women. And why would they when they're submersed in a church environment that says women can't lead or teach or preach? I mean, you can say all you want that they're complementing each other and that they're equal in their own ways, but you are not teaching women and men are equal in value or worth when you say one sex can lead and teach and one can't. So, and that goes right into the purity culture of not respecting women, blaming it on women, all of that. So,
Totally agree. Totally. I want to give a shout out to the happy heretic who just joined.
I see that.
She's outstanding. So had some IG lives with her, but she's wonderful.
I see that, and I do follow her. So,
Yeah,
yes. Hi,
across
happy heretic.
so, oh, so that being, she's there. We go. So that being said,
Mm-hmm.
we've touched a little bit on. I'm going to go a little bit off script here. Just
Oh gosh, I have my script of your questions. You cannot go off of them. I'm just kidding you. Ask
and
me whatever.
all right, that
Okay.
I you still consider yourself a Jesus follower, correct?
I do. I
Okay.
do.
What is that
I'm on my good days, some days, most days.
on? Okay, how does that? How? Okay, how did you reconcile um, Jesus, or I don't know what your view is on the rest of the Bible, with the LGBTQ plus community? Um, like, what do you see in Jesus that says, "Hey"? Because I know you're affirming, all right? So, what do you see in Jesus that said, "Hey, Jesus would love and totally accept, support"?
Um, and that was a process for me. I'm gonna have another long answer. When I had Emmy Kegler on the podcast in 2019, I was just questioning the whole like, wait, we think why are we not affirming? Why do churches have a problem? Because I'd always just taught, or I'd always just believed because I was taught that was a sin. Reading Emmy Kegler's book One Coin Found, if you haven't read it, read it. Um, she started opening my eyes to stories I hadn't heard. And also she started breaking down scriptures that I was like, that may be interpreted differently. And that was really big for me too. I actually had her back on an episode to go over all of those clobber verses. So
Wow.
when I was starting with at that point of I still believe the Bible is the inerrant word of God, which that's a whole other conversation because I don't necessarily believe that right now. But that's where I was in that moment. And so breaking down those clobber verses, the interpretation, her story, that's why I was like, well, my gosh, of course we can't just damn this whole population to hell. Like we don't even know if this was what the Bible meant. And, the whole homosexual word didn't come in the Bible till the late 1940s. So where I was then, that's what spoke to me. And I would still consider myself a Christian then. And I don't say I do or I don't right now consider a Christian. I honestly, Christians, I don't want to be associated with what people associate Christians with right now. I mean, Christian nationalists, Christian Trump followers, white Christian evangelicals. I don't associate with that because I don't adhere to those beliefs. What I got a lot of pushback. Like that was probably my biggest amount of hate mail from Instagram. Like, you say you're a Christian but you promote loving LGBTQ, all this. So I'm like, you know what, we'll take that off because I don't even know if I am. So Jesus, I can buy into.
Mm.
um and I struggle like you. We've had conversations with this. So like, what actually is the Bible? The Bible for Normal People podcast has been so huge for me. And like, there's a whole book about what actually is the Bible. I mean, when you look at the historical writings, some of the mistranslations, all of that. But Jesus, I'm like, he was always on the side of the oppressed. He was always bringing people from the margins in. He was always loving. And so if I can hold on to that. And that's the lens I choose to interpret any scripture or what I hold on to. And clearly, the LGBTQ community, I mean, are some of the most marginalized, oppressed, harmed people, especially in America. I mean, Black trans women, my gosh, how do we even? So, if I'm really being honest, and I think Jesus was here and saw that community, would he be pushing them out? Would he be damning them to hell? And he would not. And I know some people think, oh, he would, because the whole speak truth in love is all I've heard this week because of my recent post. I mean, that is not what Jesus will be doing. He welcomes people in. Yes, he told the woman at the well, go and sin no more, but that's assuming that it's a sin to be queer or gay. And that is not clear in the Bible. I don't care how you read it if you look at those clobber verses and the interpretation. So to me, if there's a question, I'm going to focus on the lens of love and what I think Jesus would actually do and how he would be in situations. So that's where I land on that. And that's why I can still say I'm a Jesus follower, because as much as I question with the Bible, I can focus on what Jesus taught and how he led and his example.
Very interesting. Okay, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
You know, and
Absolutely.
I think you nailed was like, is that even a sin? I would go a step further and say, does sin exist? But that's a whole nother.
I mean, we could do a part two. I mean, does hell exist? Does sin? I don't know. I don't know if some people are ready for that.
Oh, I do that all the time.
But
So
I mean, the whole love the sinner, hate the sin, like
Oh, that's
I'm kind of done addressing it. Like my husband shared one of my posts and he is not quite as vocal. And so he's gotten a lot of pushback and was telling me all his answers. And I'm like, I'm just done addressing that question. I mean, if you're still equating being gay or queer to being a murderer, to being an alcoholic, to being a child abuser, I can't even do that anymore. Like, and I still want to have grace and plant seeds for people, but my mind is so far gone from that that I'm just not understanding how people are still equating that. So if you're saying love this and hate the sinner, you're equating that with these sins that we all agree are quote sins or whatever, or we don't think are sins. But you know what I mean? So I don't even know how to answer that anymore without getting upset at people.
no, I get it. It just makes me want to kick people in the shins. But anyways, we move. Um,
Same. Same. Same.
so the happy heretic chimed in and says, I have ex-pastor friends who now describe themselves as Jesus followers because of the connotations around the word Christian. I think that. Oh, by the way, Rodney is really excited about what you have to say. We need to bring you back on. Uh, so, oh,
Is
and
that the happy heretic? Here,
the
bring that
happy
back on.
is no. Rodney was the one that said we need to bring you back on
Oh, to
already.
bring me? Oh, that's
Yeah.
kind. I thought he was talking about the happy heretic. And I'm like,
No,
okay, yeah, bring.
no.
Oh, that's Rodney. Thank you. That's kind of you.
Now the happy heretic said, "Yes, Brad. Does sun exist? I'm ready for that. Let's go." Um,
I mean,
it's
you
a
could
big
do
deal.
I think that would be a good combo with you and the happy heretic. And
Oh
I
my!
think
Well, if we get together, there's no telling what's going to come out of our mouths. But I vibe about that one. Okay, so moving gears just slightly here. Uh,
okay.
Created a page, an IG page, that has been a safe space for women to tell their stories.
I
Which,
would say that podcast probably is
yeah,
more. Yes, yes. And the
but
IG thing
post,
was an afterthought.
right, but it all points towards your podcast,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, which is great. How did that vision surface for you? What is it that screamed within you? Said, I need to make sure that these voices are heard.
Again, a long answer. So 2019, my podcast started in 2019, early 2019, when I was very immersed in leading women's Bible studies, mentoring women, all of that. I told my husband, I'm like, I'm kind of having the idea of a podcast to share some of these women's stories that I know from church. And at that time, not everybody had a podcast, like seemingly now. My husband had a podcast for quite a long time, a sports one. So he was an early podcaster before podcasts were so big. So he was like, well, yeah, just start one. And that is not me. I am like Enneagram 5, planning, reading, learning. No, I'm not going to do anything until I'm totally ready. It's probably why these Instagram lives make me nervous. So he's like, just start one. So he helped me, and I did just in a couple months, spring of 2019. And the stories I told were the women that I went to church with and served with. And I wanted to tell their stories that were God-based stories about God's healing, God's love, and all wrap them up in a bow. And I have to be careful about this because I don't want to disregard any of those stories. Several of those women have told me they don't want their podcast on my podcast anymore. So most all of those stories have been taken off because they don't want them associated with me anymore. So that's hurtful, but it is what it is. And I also want to acknowledge that those were still their stories. And it doesn't disregard or devalue them at all. So it started as that. And then honestly, Emmy Kegler is what changed it. That's when I was like, we're going to start telling more stories. I'm going to start reading books and getting out of my little Bible Belt church, white evangelical space and telling more stories. And I did. And so a lot of people didn't like that had come on or that were listeners. And I lost pretty much all my listening base when I started sharing Emmy's story, that of queer Christians. I started sharing Marcy Walker. She was shortly after Emmy, and we were speaking up against Trump. And it just really went down. It lost listeners, but because that is not what people signed up for. but it evolved, I think, into what it was supposed to be. And I started that podcast thinking I would change other people. It changed, or this podcast changing others, but it changed me. Like I never saw coming by sharing stories that were not my own story, that were not just like me, that couldn't be wrapped up in a little bow and safe and comfortable. So that's how it started. And I wasn't on IG for, I don't know, a year and a half into it. I'm not a social media fan, believe it or not. But I was like, gosh, I need to like market this somehow. So started a year and a half in on IG. And at first I just shared, here's the episode. Then I just started speaking up a little bit more and more, and on IG, and posting thoughts and feelings and things in my own life. And that's kind of how that account evolved. Never was the plan. And I still have some days that I'm like, I'm so done with social media, and it still upsets me, and it shouldn't. Like I don't think I'll ever have the thick skin to handle people that handle the people that say love the sin, hate the sinner, or how does that go? Hate the sinner, love the sin. I don't know how that goes. Whatever. So yeah. So that is how it started and how it is now. So I'm about a little over 3 years in. I don't know, a little over 100 episodes, and yeah, that's that.
You got a couple comments while you were talking. So,
Oh, okay.
The happy text said, the podcast arena is full of white men giving opinions. I'm not a podcaster, so one less white right here. I'm grateful for how many podcasts like yours exist now. Women's stories are important. And then Seven says, I found you when you had Marcy on and stayed.
Yes.
Rodney, thank you for joining us. I'm sorry you've got to go. Look forward to hopefully logging on, seeing you tomorrow night for your IG Live. Goddess of Tetris is in the house. I don't know if you know Goddess of Tetris.
I don't. I'm going to have to follow her. I love the name. Good gosh. Yeah.
Outstanding.
Okay.
We actually are doing an IG Live this week about the Johnny Depp trial.
Oh, I will tune in for that. I will.
Oh,
yeah. And hopefully she'll be better at getting her information to you.
Oh.
You must think I'm the most scatterbrained person you've ever met. You're like, how does that girl have a podcast?
You would love it because she's so organized and detailed and so professional with what she does. I mean,
are you saying I'm not? Like, what? What did that mean?
You just said you were like that. You were organized.
I mean, somewhat. I don't even know anymore. I don't know. But I saw the post that I know Kim, who's watching this, said she started listening when I first had Marcy on. And, I look at this podcast, and again, changed me in ways I never saw coming. I thought it was for other people. It was so for me, my own healing, my own family, but the people I've met through it, I mean, I could cry. That sounds extreme, but I could. Like, Marcy and I have become close friends. I just was out in Chicago visiting her last month. Patricia Taylor, Monica, Tasha, they have become my best friends. They have become my friend group, and they are all women that I only met through the podcast, having them on, hearing their stories, learning their stories. And then people like Kim, who's watching and commented. She was so precious to me when my dad passed away, just sending me. So it's like, I hate to get too religious, but this is why I still think there's a God or some higher power, because I see how God filled in some big gaps, or whatever you want to call it, the forces that be, when I really lost a big chunk of friends. I mean, I really did. And I feel like they were filled in more than I can imagine with people I met through the podcast and social media. So yeah, you didn't even ask me that question. I just had to throw that in.
I think that's beautifully said. I do. Just so you're aware, Goddess says she loves your shirt.
I know. 3 mom hugs.
She can't wait to connect with you. Oh, do you give mom hugs?
I am volunteered in that group, but I haven't done much. But I do want to get more involved with them. What does your shirt say? I can't see yours because pronouns. Very good.
That's my pronouns. Well, some of them. So
are those your pronouns?
No, they're
all okay. I was like, those are yours. How do we do that? She and he.
How do I pull that one off, right?
Okay, I was like, I did not know this. Okay, you
I don't.
can't have all.
My wife
Well,
always looked at me as part female. Um, if
I
you
mean,
want.
you can have she and they as your pronouns.
Hmm?
I
Yeah,
just didn't know you could have she, he, and they.
I know the he throws it all off, doesn't it?
It does. It does. So, I like it. Okay.
Okay, so back,
Moving on.
back, yeah, we're moving on. Okay, um, so is it fair to say then that your podcast has created healing through the stories that are told?
Yes. And I knew I had this question, so I wrote a big answer, and I'm not even going to look at my notes. But it was good for me to think about that because I hadn't really thought about that until you posed it. But I think healing in a way like I never thought, again, in my own life and own story. I mean, I really thought I would share these women's stories who God did miraculous things and people would relate and have faith in God. But that's not exactly what happened. Maybe some, but I think initially when I started diving into these stories that challenged me, it showed like where my own wounds and healing were needed as far as a lot of my false beliefs, my internalized racist beliefs, my internalized homophobia, all those things within myself that needed exposure and healing. And I think there's so many levels to that, answers to that. But I really strive to share women's voices on the margins from the BIPOC community. I feel like in the last year, especially, I've kind of tried to focus on some justice issues, populations that are oppressed. You know, I just had Mariah Humphreys on, and we talked about missing and Indigenous women, and it's like I want to increase people's awareness to these women, to women's issues that are really oppressed and have injustice, and a lot because of white women, and I want to bring awareness to that, and I want us to be part of the healing and not the damage that we continue to inflict. So on a lot of levels, yes, healing, but not at all how I thought it would be.
Okay, awesome. You know, I ask people those kinds of questions sometimes. I want you to reflect on the amount of impact and influence you're having.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And maybe I think I underrate that, and I still do because there's still so many days that I'm like, why am I even doing this podcast? There's so many podcasts. It takes a lot of time. I don't make money on it, and money's not my goal. I'm privileged that I don't it doesn't have to be my goal. But again, articulating some things, I'm like, if I can bring some awareness or bring a voice to people that don't always get to have their voice out there, I feel like it's good work that I'm going to keep on doing as much as I can, just like you. I mean, it's time consuming. So I'm sure you have to ask your question yourself, why do I keep doing this?
Oh, it's definitely for the money, you know.
Right. I mean, okay, you're right. Never mind what I just said. It is for that big paycheck that we get. Uh, oh
Uh,
gosh, that's
yeah,
funny. Yeah.
rolling in it, you know, from the
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
uh,
Uh-huh. Well, I see your fancy pipe collection. You must be,
oh,
okay?
oh, I've been collecting pipes for 24 years.
Have you?
Yeah.
Okay. So before
So,
you were in the big money.
yeah, before I had money, right? And
Yes.
that's it. And the money went bye-bye when the kids hit. So, you know, it's all that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so we're running up on time here. So let me
Okay, okay. Yes.
quick ask one more question.
Oh,
Uh,
just one more. Okay.
oh, we're going to have part two sometime.
Okay.
Um, if if you could give advice to a woman struggling to tell their story,
Okay. Okay. Um, I have been thinking about that all morning since I saw it on the paper. And with that, the first quote that always comes to me with that is the Brene Brown, owning your story and loving yourself through that process is the bravest thing you'll ever do. So I always have that on my mind, not just with my guests, but my own story, because I'm still working through sharing parts of my story, my parts where I was battling an eating disorder and still struggle with that. It's like
right.
there's so many parts of our story that we have to just really become brave and own. And I think the first thing I would just say to women struggling with that, there's several with that. I mean, I think you have to find a safe space to share it. And I don't think everybody's a safe space for that. I encourage women to share their stories, but if your story is coming out of being queer or trans, you're not going to go find a safe space in an evangelical church. So I think it's finding that safe space for it. And as much as I want people to come on my podcast, I get it that people aren't always ready, and they might not feel like it's the safest space for them. So I think you have to be really honest with yourself about finding that safe space. I think the other thing that I've come to realize is your story doesn't have to be, it's not going to be done, and it doesn't have to be all wrapped up in a bow. I think so much in the evangelical Christian church, we only share our stories when it's like a testimony. And I'm guilty of that. Only sharing my marriage story after we made it, after we got through the alcoholism, after we got through the bankruptcy, all of that. But your story does not have to be wrapped up in a tiny, pretty box testimony to share. So I would encourage people to share their stories in the middle of it if they feel like it's a safe space for them. Because I think there's so much power and encouragement when you're in it and you don't have the answers and you're just really honest and vulnerable, like, yeah, we're struggling right now and this is just really, really sucks and I don't know how it's going to end. So yeah, I think that those are the two big ones that I would encourage. But I just think, her quote of just owning your story, recognizing it, being honest with it is a big part of it. My daughter, my oldest, has been really key in helping me do that. I mean, just with her, some of the past from the church harm that she went through, she's been very intentional with being in therapy and really seeking that healing and being honest about it. So yeah, that's what I would say to that one, Brad.
That's awesome. I don't know if you've had a chance to see all the comments.
I haven't, because I can't. How
But
can I read and talk?
I know.
Do people do that?
I guess. So I love all the subjects matters that you discuss. Kimmer says, you have done that well. I'm grateful. Gotta says, it's amazing that you spread awareness through your podcast. Kimmer have heard several stories if it wasn't for your podcast.
Aw.
Gotta says, thank you for opening up about eating as I too have struggled with it when I was younger.
Yeah.
Gotta must share our stories. Gotta send my love to your daughter and Brad's daughter too. I don't know. I think I told you about my daughter.
You did, yeah.
And Kimber's like, so good, so thank you.
Aw, thank you, Kim. Thank you. She's always so supportive of me. Yeah.
Very last question for you.
Oh, okay. Another one. I thought we were done. Okay, one more.
Oh, support you.
Oh, okay.
Coming up, all that kind of fun stuff.
So I guess, so we can get that big paycheck. Tune in to Her Story Speaks podcast. You can subscribe to the podcast on all the things, iTunes, wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, all of that stuff. So tune into that. There's no ads. I don't make any money. Tune in, listen to the stories. I think being real intentional with listen, and I challenge people because we're all at different places, and sometimes some stories might make you uncomfortable, but I challenge people to listen to the stories, because I think people's stories are so powerful and will change you. Also, I'm on Instagram at Her Story Speaks Podcast. Facebook, I'm kind of dwindling down and not posting on there very much, so I don't even recommend people to go there. The next podcast I have coming up is about being an ally to the LGBTQ plus community. A woman that's written a book about all of that, and so I really encourage folks to listen in on that episode.
Awesome.
Okay.
And I will chime in here and just tell everybody, my followers that end up watching this, if you are not following her, you are following her page or listening to her podcast, you are missing out.
Oh, thanks for that.
Is one of my favorite podcasters, and you have such a warmth, gentle spirit.
Oh, thank you for that, Brad.
And I love your honesty and your courage, and how courageous you are. I believe that was even mentioned before in one of the comments. So eternally grateful. You have started this podcast that you're letting women tell their stories and encouraging them. Feel heard, maybe for the first time.
Yeah.
And other women are listening, going, I can relate.
Yeah.
I'm thankful that somebody's listening to me.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Brad. And thank you for listening. I mean, coming out of spaces where women, I still have that, you know, in the back of my mind, women can't preach or teach or lead. And it's like, it's a big deal to me when a white guy tells me, I'm listening to your podcast and I'm learning from your stories and I'm learning from you. I think that's so, so huge. So I appreciate you being out of your comfort zone and doing that.
Well, it's funny. It was at the beginning out of my comfort zone, but now it's just, you know what? Your truths and what you speak of are universal.
Mm,
It does,
yeah.
right?
Mm.
So I'm internally grateful that you took the time to, in the midst of your busy schedule, because I know you're busy, to do this IG Live with me. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me on, Brad. I've loved this hour. You've relaxed me. See, now I would be ready to go. Now I'm not nervous. Okay. I was shaking a little bit for the last 45 minutes. You probably didn't see that.
Nope. Nope.
Okay. I was. I am such an introvert and this sort of thing. Woo. But okay. Yeah. So if we
So
ever do a part two, I'll be just real
I,
relaxed.
if you ever want to do a part two, I'm totally game. I would love that.
Okay. So I think you need to send me a pipe.
Okay.
I will try it and I
Okay.
will let everybody know I got it from you and I'm trying it from you and all of that. And so, and I'll think about if I don't just completely choke when I take the first puff, I would think about opening a little show with you with smoke taking a couple of puffs. But I got
Well,
to see how I react to that.
I can teach you how to put the time in and how to pop without killing yourself. So
We should we should start the IG live with that.
we could maybe
Brad,
do
you
that.
teaching somebody that's clueless how to smoke a cigar or not cigar, a pipe to extend their life, right? Bring
I,
peace, all of that.
I am all in. You give me the
Okay.
time.
Okay.
So just for everyone to be aware of, I'm going to be posting this on my page. I'll invite you so you can
Yeah.
like to.
Yep.
Uh, that will be your bio, so people will know where your website is and or where your podcast is, all of that as well. So
Okay, that's great. All right, Brad. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you everybody that
okay.
watched and commented.
Yes, thank you everybody. We'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.